我每天都过着居无定所、担惊受怕的日子。
Every day I live a nomadic and fearful existence. My prime years spent wrestling with hardship, and I am now left with a mound of debt. Once I was the admired boss in the eyes of others, owning 3 companies of my own with an annual income exceeding 2 million. Now I've become a laughingstock, buried under 11 million in debt, utterly homeless. Unemployment among China's youth has surpassed 20%, including individuals who once had an income of over 2 million yuan. Where do this group of nearly incomeless individuals live, and how do they manage to get by? For those in the West, such a scenario may be hard to fathom. Therefore, in this episode, we will delve into recent social news events in China to offer a glimpse into the lives of ordinary people amidst China's surging unemployment. This is a town in Dongguan, Guangdong, home to many homeless young individuals living in these pipes. There are many here, even a man cooking his meal, presumably living within these pipes. It has evolved into a residential area. The people here say we have no mortgage, no rent, and we are quite content. Following exposure of the situation via video, netizens sarcastically commented, "With just this level of prosperity, the government is shouting the might of the motherland every day, intent on unifying Taiwan. Dear CCP, I can't walk with you anymore." Some netizens commented, "The slogan, 'We are quite happy each day,' is quite touching. As long as they are happy, that's what matters." It shows that these young individuals have understood the meaning of life and the value of freedom, unwilling to serve as the money-making machines of the Chinese Communist Party. Unlike the CCP officials who possess power and money, they give so much money to African international students but leave nothing to the Chinese people. However, these homeless individuals also understand that such a wild lifestyle won't last long. Once such videos are posted online, it is predicted that the government will quickly clean the places up, and these people will soon be wandering the streets again. In mainland China, such homeless groups are not common, just not as widespread. One person said that he had a chat with someone living next to the railway near Beijing South Station who has been petitioning the government for help for over a decade, yet he continues to live by the tracks. Life under the CCP's rule is truly tragic for many mainlanders. Having looked at the homelessness among the unemployed, let's turn our attention to those who can't afford food. What do they eat? Videos often circulate online of people across China rummaging through trash bins for food and even finishing off leftover meals at McDonald's. These are well-known strategies for finding free food. But now, there isn't enough food scraps to go around as more and more people are falling below the poverty line. This gives rise to a rather astonishing trend, eating ceremonial offerings, especially vying with the dead and deities for food. Chinese tradition involves making offerings to the deceased, often placing ample fruit at grave sites. However, as unemployment continues to swell, theft of these offerings is becoming increasingly frequent. South China News reported numerous such incidents occurring in a single day in Guangdong province in April. Some have even resorted to installing surveillance in cemeteries to prevent offerings from being stolen. One man who consumed stolen offerings suffered from diarrhea and sought medical attention, only for subsequent investigation to reveal that the bereaved family had laced their offerings with pesticide. After discovering their offerings would be stolen in less than a day, they were left with no choice but to take such measures. A netizen remarked, "At the temple near my house, apples, oranges, and liquor have all been stolen. Prior to the pandemic, such instances would occasionally occur but were not common. Recently, many people continue to place new offerings upon hearing of thefts, only for them to be stolen again within a few days." The majority of citizens adopt a neutral stance towards those unable to afford meals resorting to ceremonial offerings. After all, empathy is a human trait, and it's not as if these individuals can afford to buy food but choose to steal instead. In one video, a man working on a hill discovers offerings in front of a grave and proceeds to eat them. Netizens commented that there is no problem with it as long as he bows in respect before eating. One person admitted, "I've done this before, out of desperation when I couldn't bear the hunger anymore, having been jobless for months. Curiosity about the taste of the offerings and the thought of not wasting food made it seem less shameful. I even cleaned up the gravesite to show gratitude before leaving." Another person shared his personal experience to illustrate that when one is on the brink of starvation, eating offerings could be forgiven as long as it causes no harm to others. This person from an impoverished family ventured to Beijing to attend university in 2013, juggling part-time work alongside his studies. A novice in the big city, he fell prey to numerous scams and swindles. With little money to start with, his situation worsened when fraudulent labor intermediaries scammed him. One day, with only $1.50 in his pocket and unable to afford the $2 subway fare, he found himself stranded at a subway station in Changping, Beijing. After wandering for over 2 hours, he nearly resorted to begging. It was a stroke of luck that he bumped into a kind-hearted ex-unimate who stepped in to help. Without experiencing such desperation, it would have been inconceivable for him to contemplate begging. Unless one has experienced such desperation, he concludes, one cannot truly comprehend the circumstances that could drive a person to eat ceremonial offerings. However, not everyone who partakes in ceremonial offerings can be absolved of guilt. Take the individual in this video, for instance. They clearly have the means to buy fruit, yet they opt to steal from the offerings made to the deceased out of sheer greed and a desire to save a few pennies. Such behavior deserves condemnation. Authorities state that offerings hold a specific purpose and do not constitute discarded items. Therefore, the act of consuming such offerings could be classified as theft. Law enforcement agencies have issued statements declaring that stealing offerings is illegal. According to Chinese media reports, such behaviors are primarily committed by blue-collar workers and individuals from lower social standing, often attributed to their lack of education and cultural awareness. Indeed, the authorities have legal provisions to back up these claims, but the question remains, why isn't the narrative highlighting the policies of the government that have led to widespread unemployment and a lack of financial resources to purchase food? There's a glaring absence of charity organizations that provide food assistance. In such circumstances, some individuals have become so impoverished that they resort to pilfering offerings and sacrificial items. The disturbing frequency of instances involving individuals living in sewers and eating ceremonial offerings in China should be acknowledged. But such frank discussions are seldom broached by Chinese media because of fear of repercussions. In reality, the evaluation of this issue is complex because it's challenging to genuinely empathize with the unbearable hunger that makes a person steal fruit from a grave. If you are living in China and facing the predicament of unemployment, would you be tempted to take those fruits placed on graves? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section. Let's discuss this issue together. If you refuse to take them, it indeed testifies to your high moral standards. However, if you succumb to taking these offerings, it also highlights human nature and the things people do for survival. One person voiced their opinion, arguing that there's nothing to mock here, as everyone is merely striving for survival. Another point raised is that the number of people with no work or income is growing, so hunger isn't unusual. If someone steals ceremonial offerings out of a mere reluctance to spend on food, it is indeed immoral. However, if they do so out of desperation due to hunger, it's more crucial to understand why they resorted to theft. Of course, there are a few who fail to comprehend this, perhaps because they belong to a privileged class. One such individual comments, "My family has worked for the government for 3 generations. I can't understand the feeling of unemployment, but isn't stealing offerings akin to robbing from the gods?" Evidently, this second-generation government worker lacks empathy for the common people's hardships and maintains a scornful attitude. Thankfully, such individuals are in the minority. The majority of Chinese people indeed sympathize with the difficulties that ordinary citizens are currently facing. A blogger from Taiwan reflects on how people in China who once could afford to consume gutter oil can now barely afford even that, forcing them to steal the deceased food. It's a tragic state of affairs. While using this scenario to mock the Chinese government, the blogger questions their claim of China being the happiest country in the world. The government invites Taiwan to reunite with China, promising improved living conditions for the Taiwanese people. But when ordinary mainland citizens are forced to live under drainage pipes and compete with the dead for food, what significance would reunification hold if all 23 million Taiwanese were to experience the same harsh life? Don't you find it hard to comprehend why the Chinese government, unable to manage its internal affairs well, still insists on reunification with Taiwan? The culture of the Chinese Communist Party indeed leaves people worldwide baffled. Please share your thoughts in the comment section.